Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Monday edition of Moohead Radio. I'm your host, the Big and Furry Bovine. Joining me today, Hammer Time and Brian. And anyone else, if you want to jump in and be part of the show, and I know who you are, do so. All you have to do is look at the description on the YouTube show, and you'll see where the portal is to get in for panelists. And we'd love to hear from you. I wanted to start out the program, and I don't mean to be morbid in any way, but the story keeps telling itself over and over again, and nothing will ever be done about it. Hall of Famer Kevin Green dead at 58. No cause of death. 58 puts him 1 year older than the average life expectancy of a professional football player. I talk about it all the time. We don't know how he died, what he died from, but these shortened lifespans tied together with, and he was a prolific pass rusher, very physical football player, a very fine linebacker. Just another example of what this does to players. So it's my sadness to have to announce these things. A player who's a Hall of Famer, that story will be spread and will get reported on, whereas other guys who are suffering with the early onset of CTE, like Leroy Horde and people of that ilk who were never stars in the NFL, those guys will go on anonymously forever, and their stories will probably never be told. Unfortunate. If you didn't hear, Chris Hubbard is going to undergo season-ending surgery to repair torn knee ligaments and a dislocated kneecap. I mean, it didn't look that bad on film, but, he was getting backed up on the play, and his knee just caved in and it crumbled. And again,
fucking artificial turf eats another one.
There's a lot of things that the human body isn't meant to do. And I can tell you that going backwards and trying to stave off a bull rush isn't one of the better things to do. And then, like you said, Brian, you add in that extra grippy turf and you end up going two different directions at once. We're going to add Tony the Calf to the panel. Hi, Tony. How you doing?
I saw there's some rumblings on Twitter that it is a stroke that killed Kevin Green.
And it's just
take it for what it's worth. It's Twitter, but
yeah, it's just too damn bad, the whole thing. Yeah. And for Chris Hubbard, a real shame, an opportunity to play, and this is what happened. And and now with Wyatt Teller most likely gone until the playoffs, the Browns are going to have to rely on the young man who played the right guard position and did a good job. What is he, from Oregon or Oregon State, fifth rounder?
No, Washington.
He
was the starting center for Washington.
But had played some guard earlier in his career as well there. So
yeah,
I thought he did a pretty good job. The PFF numbers don't reflect that necessarily, but he gave up one sack. And look, the guy he gave up the sack against is a very good pass rusher, but on the overall, did a hell of a job, seeing as how he probably never felt his name and number would get called on a national television broadcast. Such an important Sunday game for the Cleveland Browns. The next thing I wanted to talk about before we get into the game itself, there was no post-game show last night. As you can tell, my beauty sleep worked. And
that's one good-looking cow.
Cleared the acne right up.
I'll tell you, I got people stroking off, man, at the 4-H club. I am like.
Speaking of stroking off, did you and Hammer jerk each other off on the fucking t-shirt fucking combinations today? You guys are both wearing fucking periwinkle blue over here.
No, this is green.
Looks blue on the camera.
On your camera? Why don't you check your settings? Dude, I'm looking at myself.
Here, I'll change my color of the light here a little. Maybe you won't see.
Yeah, no. Yeah. Does yours have a collar, Hammer Time?
Yeah, there's a.
Yeah, it's a polo.
Yeah, who makes it?
I don't know. Who's this one? Some kind of. I think it's Callaway. I think it's a golf polo.
All right. And this is Adidas. So, I mean, we're trendy guys, Uh,
In
Yeah.
1966, perhaps.
Who is
the
Minty
difference
Fresh?
between Hammer Time and I, from the looks of things, is he can keep a woman. Yeah, I know.
Inside
Ow.
jokes.
I'm healed all wounds, folks. I can literally joke about anything. And he can say this, that the great quote today that I have for you is that Colt McCoy is who we thought he was. Okay. And I really don't want to say, and good Amsterdam. And I did just brush my teeth too. It's a mint color. That's very good. Are you gay, Amsterdam?
I believe the correct color is seafoam.
I just love it. It's mint, and it's like, oh God.
Hint. You're gonna explode now, like Mr. Creosote.
Yeah, the water thin. I mean, I'm thinking, Amsterdam is looking at the backdrop of my house and going, I put a throw pillow there and a throw pillow there, and it's like, oh man.
Amsterdam is a throw pillow. What are you talking about?
I'm not going there. But Colt McCoy, I want to say a couple things about the Giants, because defensively, especially up front, they did a nice
That
job.
defensive line is fantastic.
Really good, really good.
I mean,
they got something that they can build on there.
To hold Chubb to 3.3 yards a carry when you're
And to only 1.8 yards after contact. I mean, they really did a very fine job.
Yep.
The problem here is there is no ability to call a coaching game plan for a quarterback who can't make a full 1/3 of the throws that are required for a professional quarterback to make. I'll be honest with you. There were 2 sure touchdown passes that receivers had to sit and wait for. And on both occasions, the Browns were able to put their arms up and dive in and break up the passes. But in both cases, the balls were severely underthrown. And I can't count the number of out patterns that just wobbled like wounded ducks, that just didn't even get to their targets, or were so wide because, anyone could have stepped in front of them had they been thrown where they were supposed to be thrown with the lack of velocity. You know what it was like, Hammer? It was a lot like watching Dennis Eckersley start the game for the Cleveland Indians and have 45-year-old Phil Necro come in afterwards. I mean, honestly, the velocity on the ball between Baker Mayfield leaving his hands and Colt McCoy, I mean, I don't know, man. So the fact that Colt McCoy is 34 years old, that's one thing.
He's still in the league. Give the man credit.
No, but that's the point. If this is what constitutes a backup quarterback in the NFL, man, the NFL's in for a rough ride. Because if any of these top line quarterbacks get injured, and this is representative of what's behind them,
Look at what we got.
under strength, underpowered arms. And it's funny because the quote that came out today from Carson Wentz, I'm not here to be a backup quarterback. It's like, shut the fuck up. If you're Nick Foles, you're a backup quarterback and you got a huge contract. I mean, if you're a backup quarterback that has any arm strength and physicality, you will get paid. And if you have 1/2 of a good season that you play as a backup, you know what the odds are? I mean, I bet you the odds are a good 30% right now in the NFL that a backup quarterback will be forced to play.
It's gotta be. And who was the guy from Green Bay that had like 2 games that were really good and then end up getting some ridiculous contract with Seattle and never played again? It was there's a bunch of those guys.
Oh, one that got replaced by Russell Wilson.
Yeah. And there's been a bunch of guys like that they have one or two games, they're crowned the next big thing, and next thing you know, they're gone.
Matt Schaub.
Not Schaub, yeah.
That's it. Matt Schaub. Nice job, Brian.
God, I'd forgotten all about him, and so was everybody else.
Well, because he ended up, he was the starter down in Houston.
So,
He
but
ended
yeah,
up as
there's
the starter in Houston. So.
But yeah, this has been a heck of a thing. The other thing that they had going on them for yesterday's game, and I actually pulled up. I had a quote from Colt McCoy, and hopefully I can find it. But the bottom line, the summation of the quote is that he wasn't really confident in the game plan that was called. They weren't sure of why they actually went for it on fourth down near the goal line, and then had the other guy throw the ball. And I'm like thinking, it's because Freddie Kitchens was calling the plays.
That's right.
We've seen this before.
It was the most.
No duh.
I was sitting there like, you got to be kidding. It's like you're going to run a bunch of men on the field and put a bunch of linemen in motion to go over on the one side of the field, and you're going to have your punter throw a pass in the crease down the middle to a guy who's triple covered, and that's your trick play.
Gosh.
I mean, it brought back all of the bad memories. And what it does is it tells Colt McCoy that lined up 10 yards behind the line of scrimmage, the punter has a better chance of throwing a pass for a touchdown than you do 10 yards closer. And that's what it tells the quarterback. And in this case, Freddie might have been right. I don't know, because they failed in their trips to the red zone. And Colt McCoy, there were no play calls in this football game, no matter how far they fell behind, that ever made me feel like they were trying to win. I never got the feeling. I mean, they were still running the ball up the gut when they were down. 20-3. I mean, it's like, what are you doing? There was no hurry up. There was no urgency. There was no nothing. It was like, we concede.
That was something else he mentioned in his presser. He talked about, I believe it says, in second half, we just didn't run the ball that well. Some of our adjustments and some of the things we wanted to do in the second half as far as play action, we never did. It's like, because that's typical Freddie. He just got off track, went on this other thing, and then, whatever, because they were moving the ball periodically. Obviously, they got down there twice.
Well, and this is right, because they were running successfully in the beginning of the game. He got good protection. I mean, and, again, Hammer and I were off camera talking earlier about Myles Garrett, who's obviously wiped out from COVID. You could see that there was just no energy of him trying to get around the corner. And it wasn't until the game was decided at the end of the game that he got around the edge. And it looked like that was the only time that he felt confident enough with the game ending that he would just put all of his power into one rush of the quarterback that probably exhausted him. They probably wheeled him off in a wheelchair. Honestly, Myles Garrett should not be playing. He does not have the sufficient lung capacity right now to even play back-to-back downs. I mean, you'd like to say that, that guy did a great job blocking Myles Garrett. It wasn't Myles Garrett he was blocking. It was the shadow of Myles Garrett, because he's not the same guy right now. And so that helped Colt McCoy out as well. But it didn't matter how much time he had. He just doesn't have the ability. I mean, he can throw an accurate ball down the middle, 18 yards down the field. He proved that. But anything that goes wide out.
But you could say that about fucking 98% of the quarterbacks who come into the league.
That's exactly right. I mean, I've seen guys who got drafted in the 6th round who are capable of doing that and who had winning records in college, but they just couldn't possibly deliver the ball outside.
And Dorsey.
Guys who just didn't have the requisite arm strength. But
if they have the requisite arm strength, then you get the Brandon Whedons of the world who throw it into the bleachers.
Yeah, who knows where it's going? Who is the Browns quarterback? Anderson?
Garrett Anderson was another good one.
Wind it up and let it go.
Yeah, he had a great fastball. I'll tell you, boy, did McCoy's
his career completion percentage, I think, was 45 or 48% at Oregon State.
Yeah, I mean, he just didn't know where it was going. But if Colt McCoy's been in the league for 11 years and he's still playing, I mean, at no time did I think that they had a legitimate chance. I didn't even get nervous during the game, to be very honest with you, because it became apparent that there was no faith or belief that he could do whatever needed to be done. And they never really took a shot. And
Freddie was calling the goddamn plays.
Well, I get that. But then you look at the other side of the ball, and defensively, they were doing a great job of the front line, but they were getting no pass rush on Baker Mayfield whatsoever, even though we were down to a third string right guard. And honestly, that zone defense they were playing was an abortion. I mean, it was pitch and catch. I mean, and Baker was winding up and throwing his best stuff. And there was always a receiver right there in a dead spot, and whatever it was, they were not disguising the zone. It did not fool Baker. It did not confuse him in any way, and it was literally the third, I want to say the third highest percentage completion day of any in Brown's history. Vinny Testaverde's 21 of 23 is number one, and Baker had a game where I want to say something to the effect of, I'm trying to remember, was it like 17 to 21 or something like that? But this was just an outstanding performance by Mayfield, but their zone defense just, and that's how I know. I mean, the Ravens aren't going to have any trouble with this team. I mean, and maybe Daniel Jones will be healthy enough to play, but realistically, who's going to scare you from this offense?
Yeah, their receivers aren't particularly, spectacular. There was a big stat that was also part of the post game where they were talking about separation on passes. The Browns didn't have a lot of separation on several passes, especially most of the ones to Higgins, but it was because he would curl and settle down in the zone and get the pass to him, whereas they just couldn't even get open against our depleted, to say the least, secondary. Although having Ward back seemed to really make a difference.
Well, it does make a difference. And, the one quasi big play they got down the left sideline was, again, one of these situations where Johnson just got run past. And, early on, it was like I'm holding my head going, oh, God, here we go. Don't tell me we're going to make Colt McCoy look like Johnny Unitas. But we did in the end. They're both deceased. It really wasn't a great night for Giant fans.
Well, and keeping in mind the Giants are ranked next to last in the NFL this year at 17.4 points per game. And fortunately, in last place is Jets, who we get to see next week. So,
yeah, but that defense held
14.3 before yesterday's game. 14.3 is all they average per game. And what they do, they go out and they beat the Rams. And I watched that game, and it was like, oh my God, the Jets are going to win. Oh no, they're not. Yes, they are. Oh, no, they're not. It's not like the Rams didn't have multiple opportunities to win that football game, because the Jets didn't really know how to close them out. But the Jets, the Rams
Jets should have won early. Jets should have won earlier this year with that Raiders game. I mean, they pretty much just, I don't know what the hell they were doing in that game. So,
yeah. And as far as Parkey is concerned, I don't know what to tell you. I mean, I've never seen a guy hit crossbars like that. I mean,
so one of the things you talked about, and we said about this, I'd heard this somewhere else. Had they decided to go for 2 instead, would they have done that from the 17? Is that where they would have run that play from, instead of trying to kick a 48-yard extra point?
That's a good question. And, anything of distance, I mean, he's got a questionable leg strength to begin with. And you see his face, and you just see a lost soul out there. I'm just not, not comfortable. But, again, at this point, it's not like you're gonna. If we cross over the 50-yard line, we're going for it. I mean, that's really what. And so much of football has come down to that.
Well, and that was the reasoning behind the fourth down call, I believe. Trying to keep that one drive going to try and get a touchdown.
Oh, and the ball that got tipped by Anderson or whatever there. Yeah, that was.
What happened to the Rams game is, it happens. Teams come out and don't take it seriously. You're 9-4, and this cost the Rams dearly in position. And they just were playing a beat slow. They just didn't seem enthused. It became apparent that as many gifts as the Jets were going to give them to get back into the game, they just weren't going to accept any of them.
This is the NFL too. This is not college. Any of these teams, these are professional teams. They can win on any given day, given the right thing. The odds of them winning are bad, but these are pro teams, for goodness sake.
You can't take. And somebody can get hot, and somebody can have a big game or whatever, and you don't put enough pressure on Darnold, and he's going to complete some passes, and you're just not awake or asleep at the switch. And that's what I had to listen to on ESPN. I just was going through, First Take, and and it's like they can't even lose right because they got Lawrence is he's gone. He's going to end up going to the Jags now. They lost the one pick, and it's like. Do you believe that Trevor Lawrence is the answer to the problems that are in New York? I mean, I understand how hyped the kid is. I'm watching him play, and I'm saying he's compared to Lamar Jackson. He's downright slow.
They're going to use him to try to dangle out there and try and catch a halfway decent coach. And do a clean sweep of Adam Gase's staff.
Wait, they're going to fire Adam Gase? No.
Breaking news.
Water is wet. The sky is blue.
Around the world and up his ass.
Rick has a great comment there, and I was going to say Adam Schefter actually tweeted during the day, during the game. He says, the Jets are in victory formation, and so are the Jags.
Yeah, I mean, you get criticized for losing, you get criticized for winning, but I'm just being with what I'm seeing in my eyes. Trevor Lawrence is not an open field runner in the NFL. He'd get himself killed. I mean, you look at him compared to Lamar Jackson, and it's no comparison whatsoever. And he's 6'6", and that's great height. And, they say he has great processing ability, but the speed of the game is radically different. And I'm trying to remember who the last great quarterback out of Clemson was.
Watson hasn't been bad.
Watson hasn't been bad. Yeah. Watson was definitely but before him, you got to go back a ways.
That's right. I mean, there are schools that produce positions, and then,
but Oklahoma for a long time was not known as quarterback U, and now because of Mayfield and Murray and even Jalen Hurts, all of a sudden Oklahoma is where you want to go if you want to be a quarterback in the NFL.
For a while, it was USC. Remember, everyone wanted to go to USC.
Oh, Jesus.
Yeah. I mean,
and everybody that came out of there was a fucking fluff.
Yeah. There weren't too many who amounted to a hell of a lot, but
including the big dumbass that the Cardinals drafted,
Matt Leinart.
Yeah,
the lefty.
Yeah, Clemson quarterbacks before Trevor Lawrence and Deshaun Watson. You have Taj Boyd. You have Charlie Whitehurst. Cullen Harper was in there. Woodrow Dantzler. Yeah. Who?
So, I mean, look, and nobody is a done deal. I mean, if Herbert can look as good as he looks in the pro scheme. Nobody saw that coming to this degree this quickly. But so many guys who have been proven commodities have failed in the NFL. You know, when you're as bad as the Jets are at so many positions, including your coaching staff, it's just like the Giants. I mean, you're so bad because your general manager is retarded. I mean, I have, what are the odds of actually putting together a team when your general manager has brain damage? And again, you bring in these young quarterbacks and you want them to be the reason that teams get turned around. And I think we all clearly saw with Baker Mayfield that, he got off to a great start and because nobody knew what he could do and what he couldn't do. And then they kind of caught up to him, and then he had no system. And then the beginning of this year, it was yet another new system. And, it takes time. And the people who are all in the chat room saying, fuck Baker Mayfield, he's the new Johnny Manziel. You guys are clearly wrong about that. Baker's a guy who plays with swag and confidence, but he has to be on the same page as the people he's playing with. And I just don't think he and Beckham were ever on the same page. But he appears to be on the same page as DCP and Rashard Higgins and Hooper. And he doesn't seem to have problems with these players. And they're not the quality or caliber of breakaway players as OBJ is. But again, you build a certain familiarity. Brian Sipe throwing to Reggie Rucker, nobody was going to say that Reggie Rucker was a burner. But let me tell you, Brian Sipe knew where he was. Dave Logan, too. Dave Logan wasn't going to run the legs off anybody. But, you knew if you threw the ball up, he was going to go up and get it. And you knew where he was on the field at all time.
He might come down with the ball and a ruptured spleen, but you knew he would catch the ball.
That's right. And, my feeling about, Baker Mayfield has been kind of to be silent. He's made some bad throws. He's had some bad games. He's played in some inclement weather. He's been part of a team that really underachieved, and now he's part of a team that overachieves. And my feeling is that when he's definitive with his footwork, and I'll give you great examples, that he's now running out of the pocket to gain some yardage, to gain first downs with confidence, with, okay, I'm convinced nobody's open. I've been back here too long, and I'm going to hit whatever gas I got. He's not the fastest guy in the world, but he got an important first down with his feet. And, and watching him drop back with good protection and striding forward and really following plays with his eyes and doing reads and progressions and winding up and just stepping into that throw. Instead of that double clutchy thing he was doing earlier, he knows where he's going, and he's letting the ball fly. Now, there's going to be some interceptions. There's always going to be some mistakes made. But you can't just beat a guy's brains in every time he makes a mistake. This team is winning, and it's winning for a reason. And as for the Giants to only score 6 points, oh, God, I'll tell you. Daniel Jones or no Daniel Jones, I don't know what you got. When Saquon Barkley went down, their greatest chance of striking downfield was taken away from them because they're a compacted team. I mean, if you cover the middle of the field, it's very hard for them to beat you down the sidelines with speed. They're just not built that way. And then we have to bring up Johnny Manziel. That's right.
Do we?
By today's standards, Manziel was positively slow.
Well, he also didn't put any fucking work in. And nobody
do with it too, yeah.
There was no coaching, there was no accountability, there was nothing. hey, let's just throw the kid out there and see what happens.
And you brought this up at the very beginning of the broadcast. You cannot underestimate the value of bringing in Conklin, bringing in Wills, and changing that offensive line and giving him 2 bookends at either end. And it just, I mean, one of the things, I was looking up some stat info from last year, and Mayfield's quarterback rating on the year was a 78.8. This year he's at a 99.4. He has 25 touchdowns to 8 interceptions. Last year it was 22 and 21. And his completion percentage was 59%. This year it's 64. Oh, well. I mean, it's just,
It's funny that Pat, like Roethlisberger, let me tell you, when you throw a ball 73 yards in the air like Baker Mayfield did a week ago, and throw the ball from your 40-yard line through the back of the end zone, even Aaron Rodgers, who had the other so-called longest throw, was like, oh no, I've done that before, and it's like he's protecting his record because Aaron Rodgers is better off in insurance commercials at this point in his life. But Baker Mayfield isn't lacking for arm strength. I think with Baker, it's footwork and it's confidence and it's trusting his eyes and it's learning how to process a little quicker. That would be the way I would define this. I also wanted to dedicate a piece of this show to answer a lingering question. And with mathematical possibilities, how can the Browns make the playoffs at this juncture? And I think that there were a lot of things that, and I was posting some things on Twitter, and I don't think that people realized that this past game against the Giants was the least significant of the games remaining because they were not. It's a non-conference game, it's a non-divisional game. Yeah. And the tiebreakers go in a certain order beyond head-to-head that goes right to, conference records and things of that nature. And we have stern competition. The Miami Dolphins may be a game behind us, and they may have 2 tough games ahead of them. But the bottom line is that they would beat us if we both ended up 11-5. They would win the tie break.
Dogs who eat my Frankos.
So that kind of, and it's eye-opening. So I decided to do some research about how this could be done. Obviously, if the Browns win out, they're in.
But the Browns have the tie break against the Colts.
Right.
And the Titans.
Yeah. So let's do it this way. The Browns beat the Jets, the Colts lose to the Steelers, then it's a done deal. Okay?
Yeah.
So we got to be cheering for the Steelers as well as the Browns on Sunday, as goofy as it sounds. The Browns beat the Jets and the Dolphins lose or tie the Raiders. The Raiders right now don't look like they can beat anyone, and I think Marcus Mariota is going to continue quarterbacking. Any word on Derek Carr?
Not that I've seen.
I mean, what was the injury on him?
Nothing. I mean, must have been a groin muscle or something.
Yeah, I again, I don't see the Raiders really being able to push the Dolphins like they would have earlier in the season. The Raiders have really fallen off the map, having lost 4 or 5 games. But again, then the Browns beat the Jets and the Ravens would have to lose or tie the Giants. We know that's not going to happen.
Must not be too serious because Gruden in a press conference that they said Carr is likely to play.
Well,
yeah, it says that on NFL.com as well. It says significant groin injury, but availability for the Dolphins game is still in question.
Yeah, so. I mean, honestly, I don't think the Raiders have a chance with Mariota to beat the Dolphins, but with Carr, if he can just maintain the ball, the thing with Tua is he will make mistakes if you can put pressure on him. But the Raiders are such a Jekyll and Hyde team. To give you an idea how important the last two games of the season are for the Cleveland Browns, if Cleveland, who currently has a 92% chance of making the playoffs, that's a statistical probability, it would drop to 63% if they lose to the Jets right off the bat. And that's before factoring in any of the outcomes of the other teams who are in the race.
Well, if they lose to the Jets, I don't think they deserve to make the
playoffs. You can make the argument, but I'm saying, everybody was worried about the Giants. That was the least important game. We could have lost the Giants game, and if we won the last two, we're in. Depending on how the Titans, Colts, Dolphins, and Ravens perform in Week 16, a Cleveland loss to the Jets could drop its playoff odds down to 37%. And then in Week 17, we host the Steelers. And if Pittsburgh beats the Bengals, which there's no way they're not going to, or the Colts next week, it's going to clinch. Pittsburgh's going to clinch the AFC North. All right.
Yeah.
We're not in any way playing for the division title. We're trying to get into the damn playoffs.
And here's the other point to that. The Steelers probably aren't going to be able to catch the Chiefs for the overall number one. So will they be resting people knowing that they have to play the first week coming back?
A lot of it has to do with Buffalo. A lot of it has to do with Buffalo because, what would the matchups be? There may be a matchup that the Steelers would rather have in the first round of the playoffs, and it may mean that they would need to win Week 17. Right. So
goddamn well the Ravens ain't losing another game this season.
No. They're playing nobody. They might as well just, the Jags have just totally given up, and they obviously want that pick or the ability to trade it for a lot of assets.
Well, then don't they play the fucking Giants and the Bengals the rest of the season? The Ravens?
I believe the Ravens play the Jaguars. Am I correct?
They just played them yesterday.
Oh, well, that's right. That's right.
Yeah.
Who is it?
I think it's
who plays the Jags in the last game?
They play the Giants and the Bengals.
Oh, yeah. That's guaranteed.
Yeah, they ain't going to lose.
No, they're not losing. No.
All right.
They'll probably score 40 points a game on those two.
Here's the interesting thing. The Ravens would lose in a tiebreak at 11-5 to the Dolphins. All right. And these are things that you have to start reading in depth about. Nobody's really talking about this in a specific sense. I'm drawing this with broad strokes, but the Titans and the Colts, it is possible they could both win out and go 12-4. I mean, it's
Colts
totally
play the Jaguars, but they play the Steelers next week in Pittsburgh.
Sorry?
The Colts next week play the Steelers in Pittsburgh and then the Jaguars to finish the season.
So they're going to win the last game of the season, but obviously the game against Pittsburgh is a very important game for both teams. More so for the Colts. If the Colts go 1-1 and end up at 11-5, and we lose one of our final two games, we win that tiebreaker because we directly beat the Colts and we directly beat the Titans. But the Titans are in line to win the AFC South. Okay, so we are not going to be competing with the Titans if the Titans continue to win, and even if they wind up tying the Colts, the Titans are going to win the AFC South. So it's the Colts we're concerned about, so we cheer for Pittsburgh, and it's the Dolphins we're concerned about, so we have a chance to cheer for both teams who are playing against them.
I don't know if you can really put away the Titans. They've got the Packers at Green Bay and the Texans at Houston.
The Texans, no, they don't know how to win.
Yeah.
No. And Deshaun Watson is fed up, and he just wants to go home in one piece.
I don't think they'll beat Green Bay, though, in Green Bay.
And then the Titans are a good bet to finish at 8-4 in AFC play, while the Colts would be looking at a 7-5 conference record. The Browns, with one loss, could still finish 7-5 in the conference. The Ravens, by winning out, also have a 7-5 conference record. But you see, they head-to-head, beat us. The game that we could have put the Ravens away, we lost by 5 points, right? In a hell of a game. Yeah. We could have ended all of their hopes for the season right then and there. And by the hair of their chitty chin chins, they got back, and the Ravens are not gonna lose. If the Titans and Colts both finish 12-4, then the Titans, they win the tiebreaker and win the South. The Ravens, by sweeping the Browns, own the head-to-head tiebreaker over them. All right, and like the Browns, they also have a tiebreaker over the Colts. The Ravens do. So the Ravens stand to jump from their present 8th position to the 7th position, but can end up as high as 5. All right. So if the Browns were to go 0-2 and finish at 10-6, fuck that, we're gone.
Yeah, right? No way.
That would give us a 6-6 conference mark, and the Dolphins would be in. So what it really boils down to, without all the mathematics, is the most important game is the next game, and they're both conference games. One's a division game, and you got to really win both of them if you want to be sure you're going to be in the playoffs. And 11-5, if we beat the Jets and lose to the Steelers, there is still a chance that we're not going to get in with an 11-5 record, and that would be a real shame. But there is that possibility, and that would be the first time that ever happened.
We've seen it happen before. See 2007.
Yeah, that's right. It has happened one time before, and who was that it happened to?
Cleveland.
That's right. That's right. Not a good thing. So
I don't see how they lose to the Jets, though. I mean, you could say any given Sunday, but with the way Baker.
If you were a Rams fan, you would say there was no way your team was going to lose to the Jets. I never want to hear that, because there's no way. But there's been a couple of ways this year that teams have lost games that they had no business losing. And
the Chiefs at the Raiders, for one.
That's right. I mean, there's been a couple of them, and there are trap games, but the biggest traps are the traps that players put themselves in by not coming in ready and not coming in prepared. So, there was another thing when I was talking about Colt McCoy. There is a look of a team that isn't really trying to win, and so it would be with the New England Patriots. I watched that whole game with the Dolphins, and it wasn't that the Dolphins were outstanding. Cam Newton should be out of the league. Cam Newton can't play anymore.
Five touchdown passes to 10 interceptions on the season.
The judgment that he's showing back there, his movement is nowhere near as good as it used to be. His throwing motion looks wonky.
His arm is shot.
His throwing motion looks wonky as hell. He's doing something with the ball. It's really very peculiar. So I really don't know. But again, I never got the impression that Bill Belichick was doing anything but trying to win like a 9-7 football game. He looked like, like Eric Mangini in the snow in Buffalo, honest to God. They're not, just like Colt McCoy, they can't put the game in his hands like he could with Tom Brady, who came back from 17 down to beat the Falcons. You can't you can't lean on Cam Newton, and he's throwing balls into traffic that a veteran quarterback should never be doing. He's sitting on the sidelines with a smile on his face when he's playing like dog shit. He's still living in the past somewhere. I don't know. I just got the impression that it was like, wow. not just because New England was getting, eliminated, but there is just no urgency. There is no gear there. There's no rallying force. Cam Newton is not a leader of men. Cam Newton is a self-promoter. I've never cared for him. I thought he was full of a lot of bluster, a whole Superman thing that he created. And, nothing. There's nothing there now. And his quote after the game, I got a lot of good football left in me. And it's like, yeah, tossing with your kids in the backyard. Shut the fuck up. You had an opportunity to show what you have left in you. The coach gave you an opportunity. He came right out before the game, 2 weeks before, and said he is the starting quarterback. And now Cam Newton's being told that the Stidham is going to be allowed to play out the season, because what's the point? There's no future in a 31-year-old washed up quarterback coming off an arm injury whose mobility, which was half of his game to begin with, is gone. Just not impressed. And I don't feel that mentally, he's in tune with where he's at. And I don't think he's ever going to be a drop back kind of quarterback. And he's not going to be fast enough to live up to the new standard of the elusive NFL quarterback. He's a big guy, and he used to be able to power through people, but he also had speed. That's diminished. A lot of this stuff at 31 is diminished, and he's just not a pocket passer. What is it, Hammer? You're muted.
I was going to say, are you trying to say he has diminished skills?
There you go. Bernie's cringing right now.
To throw that right back at Belichick.
Yeah, well, it's time. This time it would be true. And I'm not even saying that it wasn't true with Bernie. Bernie had taken a lot of hits, and old Big Bird was, never mobile to begin with. But it was the
arm injuries that were really starting to add up, though.
Yeah,
he had the fucked up wrist, and he took a good shot to his throwing elbow.
And Pat brings up a question: if it's true for Myles Garrett, is it true for Cam Newton? And the thing is that he hasn't been good since COVID, and I can't be helping him. But I don't think that COVID changes your perception of what's on the field. I mean, if you're gassed, if you're not at full strength, that's one thing, but throwing into crowds of 3 people covering a receiver, and the ball just doesn't look like it's coming out of his hand right. He looks like he's fallen into a mechanical way of throwing so that he has enough arm strength after the injury that he had to be able to get the ball downfield, but it's very awkward looking and it's not accurate. So, there's too many third and longs. There's too many, and the wide receivers there. Let's be honest, for all the talk about Bill Belichick, the front office in New England has just not hit on the wide receiver position. And I know number 15, and I can't remember his name now, for the Patriots, the guy they were thinking that he was their first round pick this last year, and 26th pick. And they thought he was going to be killer, and he's been nothing. And I saw a listing of the last 8 drafts and the wide receivers, just no help. And I'm sure that's why Tom Brady hightailed it out of there, because, better to be throwing to Antonio Brown, even though he's half crazy, and throwing the ball to Gronk, even though he's 3/4 dead, than throwing to people who can't catch the football. And that seems to be what's happening in New England. They're just not a good team. Time's passed them by. They lost their leader, but the drafts have not been good for that team. And that's how you fall behind in the NFL. We should know. When you start drafting people like Denzel Ward who can contribute, then, I always say it's some good drafting and it's some real good luck. And I mean, did Dorsey know that Wyatt Teller would be this good of a guard? I don't think anybody did. But nobody thought that we would be running a zone-based running game and with zone blocking scheme. And obviously, Teller excels at that. It's so much of it's scheme and what you expect from players. So you got to have a little luck. You got to hit lucky on somebody. The Steelers have been very good with wide receivers. You're drafting guys maybe in the second, third round. I remember when Wallace was playing for the Steelers. He was like a third-round pick, I want to say, and he turned out to be a dandy. You got to get a little lucky, and you've got to do your homework, and you've got to make a few slick trades here and there. And you look at who's contributing for the Browns, and look, Adrian Claiborne is contributing to the front line. The pieces that you bring in, it was kind of like when the Browns brought in Big Daddy Hairston. I remember Carl Hairston. His better years were behind him. But, you bring a certain type of player who's got leadership skills and can bring the young guys together. Who you bring in, they may look like fringe players, but in the end, these guys can step up. They still got game experience. And then there are other guys who find their way into a scheme like Rashard Higgins. And Rashard Higgins knows how to run a pattern and knows how to catch a football. And once he and the quarterback are on the same page, he's much better than his combine numbers would show. And, he's kind of like Keenan McCardell, a guy who just catches the football. He may not break down the open field and give you the big play, but he is reliable. And Browns have a lot of reliable players right now on the offensive side of the ball, and it's helping. We need more of those reliable players defensively. I'm not thinking we're going to get superstars, but, whether Delpit and whether Greedy Williams, and I don't know, Greedy Williams, will he ever play again? We don't know whether that nerve damage is something that's permanent. So, yeah.
Before we get out of here, real quickly, congratulations to Moo. You have the lowest winning score.
Yeah. It wasn't for we could have easily put up the 27. We just dilly-dallied and frittered away the clock. And when it became apparent that when they got the ball, they were going to help us do that same thing. I mean, it was like, okay, we'll just keep handing it off. We made a few penalties, made a few sloppy errors, a bad snap. I don't know what happened with Shredder on another ground ball snap. That was a little strange.
It looked like he kind of ran it into his foot.
I don't know. We were fortunate to get that ball back. But we could have easily put 27 on the board against them, and I said 27-17, but there's no way in creation that the Giants were going to get 17 points. I gave them 17 because that's what they scored against the Seahawks. I figured, well, they can do that much. Not that day. And this is very true, Christian. That was the greatest of the throws, but just remember, throwing to a covered Jarvis Landry is better than throwing to a wide open Njoku.
Yeah, with cement bricks for hands.
Hey, Njoku caught a ball.
And he probably would have been
play.
Yeah, amazingly, he didn't hobble off the field with another 6-week injury.
But that ball was thrown right where it had to be thrown. I mean,
I can just picture Baker, having that necessary roughness moment where he zooms in on between the 8 and the 5 and just giving him a fucking
fires a bazooka rocket into his fucking chest.
But it's great because that pass was an example of what teams would do against us. When we had decent coverage, the quarterback would somehow fit the ball in, and again, that ball was just fitted in so beautifully and led the receiver, and nobody else could have caught it. And, Landry just has great hands. That was an extremely impressive throw. The only bad throw I saw Baker Mayfield make in this entire game was in a set down zone situation. He threw the ball expecting Landry to lean a little bit more to the outside, and so the ball wound up behind Landry. and he was wide open and sitting in his zone like every other receiver was during the course of the day. It's the only bad throw that I saw him make. I mean,
and he even on some of the bad throws, he was making them. They were still catching the ball. I mean, 27 of 32.
That's amazing.
Is pretty incredible. And when NFL has that next gen stat, the thing that it's completion percentage above expected. It was 16.4% above expected. So talk about efficient. And some of those throws he made, I mean, he just cranked it. He really just put some, that mustard on the ball and just burned it out there and nailed these guys. It was impressive.
He stuck the ball on the numbers on so many occasions. Higgins, there's ball, that thwacked him right in the 8 and the 2. I mean, some of those little, what I call the dead spaces, really, the ball was getting there so quick that there was no reaction time that the safeties would have. And just remember, Christian, everybody goes through some crap days. And I think everybody would say that 2020 has been a shitstorm, an absolute shitstorm. It's been a shitstorm health-wise, politically. It's been, for me personally, it's watching my father going through what he's going through, which is really, really tough. It's been tough for everybody. And
I only had to deal with 9/11.
Yeah. The truth is that, this show is tonic to me. There have been, right now I'm going through, I don't talk much about it on the air, but I talk to the guys before the show. But a really badly herniated disc, it's either that or it's damaged, from I have advanced degenerative disc disease. And I really hurt myself on the tennis court a couple weeks ago. And this thing ain't going away. And it's numbing my left foot. And it's like, I'm sitting here to do the show. I'm going to pay afterwards because it's compressing my spine to sit down. But, I love doing the show, and you wait long enough for a team to get good enough. And, I'm sorry if I don't do post-game shows for nighttime games, but, it's hard enough to sleep with this condition without having to sit for 45 minutes after a game while I've been sitting watching the game. I got to think of my health first. So, that's some of the reasons for that. We all have crap days. And that's how we lend each other a helping hand. And the thing that draws us together is we're Browns fans, and we're doing well this year. And it would be a disappointment to me if they don't make the playoffs. If we make the playoffs and lose in the first round, I'll be happy. I want us to get into the playoffs because it starts with that. It was like when LeBron came his first couple of years, and we were just like 33 and 49, and it was like, we're not very good. And watching the team go from being not very good to becoming a little better and a little better, this would be a real turning point for the Cleveland Browns to be able to come back next year with continuity. And I think that's just huge. And we all get to sit and watch this together and talk about it is really great.
The other thing that kind of is a side benefit of this is that players might actually want to come to Cleveland now because they see a culture that is good. And that's one of those kind of things.
Not only good, but winning.
Yeah, I mean, it's in general. And if you're a defensive player, you're thinking, hey, I can make a contribution here and potentially be on a very good team. So, that's something. It's not like the Lions. I don't know if you saw the story on the Lions. Their special teams coordinator, they already got rid of Matt Patricia this year. So their special teams coach went ahead and called for a fake punt in which he didn't consult with any of the other coaches on the team. Not to mention half the players on the field at the time didn't even know what was going on. And they went ahead and ran this fake punt. Needless to say, he's unemployed today. So we don't have that. That's what we had last year.
It was the headless horseman, and nobody communicating with anybody. You could see it really in the Hard Knocks episodes. You could see that There were differences of opinions, and you could see Hugh Jackson at odds with Todd Haley. You could see all of the things that would lead to Freddie Kitchens becoming the head coach. And then you saw a guy who was, aw, shucks me kind of guy who turned out to be the great dictator, a guy who literally tried to ruin Rashard Higgins' career. Literally, I mean, just had a doghouse that was like a 6,000 square foot condominium. You just can't run an organization. You can't have people helter-skelter making bad decisions like that. And when I saw that, the going for it for fourth down, it's like, God damn it, if you're going to go for it on fourth down, and this whole notion of Joe Judge saying, we're coming out here strong, that's weak. That's weak. A strong team would say fourth down and however many yards it was to go. I mean, I want to say it was maybe 4 yards to go or whatever, or 6 yards, whatever it was. We're gonna punch that ball in. We have a play, a real honest to God play, not a Chinese fire drill, an actual goddamn play that we practice just in case when we need something like this, and we execute it really well in practice, and that's what we're going to go with. That's the strong approach. The weak approach is trying to trick your opponent into thinking you're going to do one thing, and then you end up doing it differently, but with the wrong set of people on the field. Just incredibly inept. So, I got to get running now because I know that my stepmom is calling me about my father, and I want to find out what's going on today. So, right now, tomorrow he's getting tested on COVID because he technically was exposed by a hospital worker back earlier in the week. So COVID is ongoing, and for a 90-year-old man, it's a death sentence. I want to find out what's going on. So I want to find out whether I can visit him tomorrow because, they're making people wear fucking goggles in the hospital. It's like, I feel like fucking Lloyd Bridges and Sea Hunt going into the hospital. You need some fucking scuba, your little flippers. I can walk to the hospital.
Oh, man.
We love some Lloyd Bridges.
Lloyd Bridges. ¿Quién es más macho?
Yeah, it's Lloyd Bridges.
Lloyd Bridges. Who was it? It was ¿Quién es más macho? And what was the other name? Was it?
It was. It was.
Damn it!
Well, we'll have to see it between now and Friday. We'll have to be. I'll be looking it up.
I used to know this. ¿Quién es más macho? Oh, Yak Lord. Yak Lord.
Yak Lord. Yeah.
It was.
See, yeah.
Well, at least Hammer Time and I are having a good time talking about things that old overweight guys talk about. All right, everybody. Thanks a lot for tuning into this edition of Moohead Radio. I appreciate all of your support, and I'm going to continue being here for the run down the stretch.
Nick Chubb makes the Pro Bowl.
What?
Nick Chubb makes the Pro Bowl.
Well, damn well should.
Andy Janovich did not, despite being number one in fan voting.
Yeah. As far as Friday on Christmas, what do you guys think? Should we be doing a show on Christmas
Day? Ooh, yeah.
You got to. It's a fucking Browns preview. I mean, unless you do it on Saturday.
I'm not sure how I want to do it because if I'm not going to have, you guys have families and things like that. I
have my typical eating Chinese food and seeing a movie, so it's pretty much.
Yeah, we're having Mastacholi this year, so.
I
remember his first album. That guy was awesome.
Oh yeah.
Mastacholi. Yeah.
He was a great director too.
Clint Eastwood and
Let me figure it out. One of two things. I'm either going to do a live panel show like this if I have panelists, or I'm going to do a pre-recorded show. One way or another, you'll see me. We'll see if it's live or not. But I want to be respectful in the holidays. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. We will see you one way or another on Friday, and we can talk about what might happen against the New York Jets. Until then, hasta la vista, Pasture Heads. Good night.